Ladies and gentlemen, today, let us take a moment to observe something very important. In life, separation is not only physical, it is also emotional and spiritual. When you choose to go no contact, it is not simply an action against another person, it is a decision for yourself. But then the question arises, what does the other side hope for when you step away? A narcissist does not see separation as freedom. They see it as a challenge, as a threat, and as an opportunity to manipulate once again. So in this speech, we will explore the hidden expectations, the silent hopes that narcissist carries when you no longer give them your presence. And by understanding this, you will also understand why your silence, your distance, is not weakness, it is strength. When you decide to go no contact with a narcissist, the very first thing they hope for is that you will eventually be the one who breaks the silence. To understand this, you need to realize how deeply silence threatens the narcissist's sense of power. For them, interactions with you have never been about connection or genuine relationship. They have always been about maintaining control, extracting attention, and feeding their fragile sense of superiority. So when you suddenly step away and stop providing that steady stream of energy, it is like cutting off the air they breathe. They are left with an emptiness they cannot fill on their own, and this emptiness immediately drives them to hope that you will not last long in your decision. The narcissist knows that silence is uncomfortable for most people. They count on the fact that human beings are wired to seek resolution, to avoid tension, and to repair broken connections. They expect you to feel the pull of guilt, confusion, or longing that comes with disconnecting from someone who once played such a central role in your life. They rely on this natural discomfort, hoping it will push you to send a message, answer their call, or reopen the door they fear is closing for good. In their mind, the silence you create is not a boundary to be respected, but a test of endurance, and they are betting that you will not pass. Every day you remain silent chips away at the narcissist's illusion of dominance, but in those days of waiting, they create a narrative that convinces them they still hold influence over you. They may tell themselves you are only taking a break, that you are secretly watching them from a distance, or that you are too weak to stay away forever. This is why they sit in hope. They need to believe that you are still caught in the invisible net of their control, even if you are not speaking to them directly. Their entire self-image depends on this belief, because the alternative, that you have chosen freedom and no longer need them, strikes at the very core of their insecurity. This hope that you will break the silence first is also tied to the narcissist's hunger for validation. When you reach out after going no contact, you are unconsciously validating their importance. You are showing them that they still matter enough for you to take the first step. That single act restores their sense of superiority. In fact, they often rehearse in their minds how they will respond when you finally do contact them again. They imagine themselves as the one in control, magnanimously allowing you back in, while secretly relishing the proof that you could not live without them. This fantasy is one of their strongest motivators during the period of no contact. Yet beneath this surface hope lies fear. The fear that your silence might actually last, that you might discover peace, clarity, and strength without them. This possibility terrifies the narcissist because it exposes the truth they spend their lives hiding from. They are not indispensable, they are not as powerful as they pretend, and they cannot survive without the supply of attention they draw from others. Your silence is the mirror that reflects this reality back to them, and they desperately want you to shatter that mirror by reaching out. The longer you remain silent, the more restless the narcissist becomes. They may try subtle tricks to provoke a response, indirect messages, displays on social media, or attempts to get mutual acquaintances involved. These tactics are not signs of strength, but of growing desperation. They are attempts to engineer situations where you feel compelled to break your own boundary, just so they can breathe again. And through all of this, their greatest hope remains unchanged, that you will give in first, that you will prove their imagined power is still real, and that the silence will not last long enough to reveal how fragile they truly are. When you choose to go no contact with a narcissist, one of the strongest hopes they carry within themselves is that you will begin to doubt your decision. They understand, even if only subconsciously, that this choice takes a lot of courage and clarity. Cutting ties is not something that happens in a moment of weakness. It is a deliberate act of reclaiming your peace and refusing to participate in cycles of manipulation. Because of this, the narcissist cannot accept the idea that you have made a final decision based on strength. Instead, they hope that time, loneliness, and emotional pressure will begin to erode your certainty, leaving you questioning whether you acted too quickly, too harshly, or too absolutely. Doubt is the tool they most want you to carry within your own mind because it is more powerful than any direct manipulation they can attempt from outside. If they can plant a seed of hesitation, that seed can grow into confusion, guilt, and eventually reversal of your choice. The narcissist hopes you will start to replay old memories, focusing not on the pain they caused, but on moments of affection or care that were always strategically given to keep you tied to them. They count on nostalgia as a weapon, expecting that you will selectively remember what once felt good while minimizing or excusing the harm that finally pushed you to cut them off. This inner conflict is their greatest wish, because if you begin to argue with yourself, they no longer need to do the convincing. As you remain in silence, they imagine your thoughts circling back to questions like, was I too extreme? Could I have tried harder? What if they change? These questions are exactly what they want you to ask, because each one weakens the boundary you built. In their minds, your no contact is only a temporary wall, one that will eventually crumble under the weight of uncertainty. They feed on the possibility that you will start second, guessing yourself late at night, when emotions run high and clarity is harder to hold on to. They hope you will confuse temporary feelings of loneliness with a sign that your decision was wrong, rather than recognizing them as natural growing pains that come with reclaiming your independence. What makes this hope so central to the narcissist is that it relieves them of responsibility. If you begin to doubt your decision, they do not have to face their own behavior or acknowledge the damage they caused. Instead, the story becomes about your supposed inability to decide clearly, your sensitivity, or your lack of endurance. They will twist the narrative to suggest that you overreacted, that you misunderstood, or that your silence is an emotional game rather than an act of survival. By hoping you will doubt yourself, they protect the fragile image they carry of being blameless, powerful, and still desired. The narcissist thrives on cycles, and doubt is what reopens the door to another round. If you convince yourself that maybe they have changed, or that maybe you misjudged them, you are far more likely to answer a message, accept a call, or agree to meet. And once contact is re-established, the cycle begins again with promises, charm, and temporary displays of kindness, only to eventually lead back to the same manipulative dynamics you worked so hard to escape. This is exactly the loop they want to pull you back into, and yourself, doubt is the bridge they hope will carry you there. Deep inside, the narcissist knows that if your decision holds firm and you trust yourself fully, their influence over you ends. That is why they rely on the subtle erosion of your confidence rather than direct confrontation. They do not need you to immediately come back. They only need you to start questioning. The smallest crack in your certainty gives them the chance to wedge their way back into your mind and your life. That is why they hope you will doubt your decision, because doubt is the silent undoing of boundaries, the invisible chain that can pull you back without them ever lifting a finger. When you remove yourself from the orbit of a narcissist by going no contact, one of the deepest hopes they carry is that you will eventually feel guilty. Guilt is a powerful emotional lever, and the narcissist knows how to exploit it better than almost anything else. They thrive on twisting situations so that you feel responsible for their emotions, their struggles, and even their reactions to your boundaries. By stepping away, you are breaking free from a cycle where your energy and empathy were constantly redirected toward them. The narcissist hopes that with distance, guilt will creep in and begin to undo your resolve. They want you to feel as though you have abandoned them, wronged them, or acted selfishly. The roots of this hope come from the way they conditioned you during the relationship. A narcissist often programs their target to feel accountable for their moods. If they were upset, you were expected to calm them. If they were angry, you were supposed to soothe them. If they felt insecure, it was your job to reassure them. Over time, this conditioning creates an invisible script inside you that whispers, "It is my fault. I should fix this. I owe them something." When you finally cut contact, the narcissist hopes that script will continue to run in your mind without their direct prompting. They are counting on your conscience and compassion to work against you. Guilt can be even more persuasive than fear because it disguises itself as morality. The narcissist knows this and carefully crafts narratives in which they appear as the victim, and you appear as the cold, unfeeling person who walked away. They hope you will begin to imagine them alone, suffering, perhaps even spiraling because of your absence. This imagined suffering is designed to pull at your heart, to make you forget the very real suffering you endured at their hands. If you start to picture them as helpless or abandoned, the guilt intensifies, and the desire to relieve it can draw you back into their grasp. They may also use indirect tactics to reinforce this guilt. Even in your absence, they might post messages, display sadness, or communicate through mutual contacts in ways that make you appear heartless for leaving. These displays are not authentic expressions of pain, but calculated performances intended to reach your conscience. They hope that others will echo the message, "Why are you being so harsh?" or "They really miss you," so that the guilt does not just come from within, but also from external pressure. By doing this, they turn your community into a stage on which your role is painted as the one who caused harm simply by protecting yourself. The most dangerous part of guilt is that it can make you forget the reasons you went no contact in the first place. The narcissist hopes you will start rewriting history, downplaying the manipulations, insults, betrayals, or neglect. In moments of guilt, your mind may whisper, "Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I overreacted." This rewriting is exactly what the narcissist wants, because if you see them as the injured party, you will feel compelled to repair the damage you supposedly caused. And once you step back into their world to soothe that guilt, the cycle of control reestablishes itself. What the narcissist refuses to acknowledge is that your decision to go no contact is not an act of cruelty, but an act of necessity. Still, they will cling to the hope that guilt will cloud your vision, making you mistake self-preservation for selfishness. Their greatest wish is that you will turn your empathy inward toward them instead of keeping it as a shield for yourself, because guilt is not just about feeling bad, it is about responsibility. The narcissist wants you to once again feel responsible for their well-being, even though they were never willing to take responsibility for how they treated you. The longer you hold your boundary, the more desperate they may become in their attempts to trigger guilt. They may spread stories about your coldness, exaggerate their suffering, or remind you of everything they once did for you, as though you are indebted to them forever. Yet beneath all of this noise lies their simple hope, that guilt will bend your will, that your heart will override your clarity, and that you will return not because you want to, but because you cannot bear the weight of feeling like the one who hurt them. This is how they weaponize your goodness against you, and why guilt becomes one of the most potent tools they hope will lead you back. When you step away from a narcissist and go no contact, another strong hope they carry is that you will miss their presence. For them, the relationship was never about genuine love or mutual respect. It was about control, dominance, and ensuring you remained a source of attention. So when you take that away, they do not just lose access to your time and energy, they also lose the validation that comes from knowing they are constantly on your mind. To the narcissist, being remembered and missed means they still hold significance, and significance is their lifeline. They hope that as the days pass, loneliness will creep in, and you will begin to focus on the void rather than the freedom that silence provides. They often create relationships where they become central to every detail of your life. Through charm, routines, and sometimes even isolation, they position themselves as the anchor of your world. This is not done out of love, but as a strategy to ensure that when you leave, the absence feels overwhelming. The narcissist is fully aware of the intensity of their presence and counts on it being unforgettable. They believe you will sit in the silence and crave the chaos, the drama, and even the crumbs of affection they occasionally offered. Missing them, in their mind, is inevitable because they think no one else can fill the space they occupied. The hope that you will miss them also feeds into their sense of superiority. Narcissists crave the idea that they are unforgettable, that they are somehow unique in your life experience. They imagine you going through your days, encountering reminders of them in small moments, and feeling a longing that grows stronger over time. They may even set traps to fuel this, boasting memories online, sending indirect messages, or orchestrating situations through mutual acquaintances, so that reminders of them linger in your environment. Each reminder is designed to reignite the attachment bond they believe you cannot sever. What they fail to understand is that missing someone does not mean they deserve to return, but the narcissist is not interested in such distinctions. They do not care whether you miss them with fondness, sadness, or even anger. What matters is that your emotional energy is still directed toward them. In their mind, any form of emotional attachment, whether love, longing, or resentment, means they remain relevant. The worst outcome for them is indifference. That is why they hope so deeply that you will miss them. Indifference signals freedom, while longing signals unfinished business. They also know that missing someone can make boundaries feel weaker. They imagine that if the ache of absence grows strong enough, you will convince yourself that even a toxic connection is better than none at all. They hope you will forget the reasons you left and focus only on the moments when they provided comfort or excitement. This selective memory is their greatest advantage because they know how powerfully the human mind clings to emotional highs, even when those highs are surrounded by pain. They want you to romanticize what was, to turn the relationship into a story of passion instead of manipulation. When you miss someone, it is natural to consider reconnecting, and the narcissist places all their hope in that moment of temptation. They believe that missing them will create the urge to send a message, to check on them, or to peek at their life from afar. And once that door is cracked open, they know how to slip back in. Their greatest fear is that you will learn how to sit with the feeling of missing someone without acting on it. Their greatest hope is that you will confuse missing them with needing them. The irony is that the presence you may occasionally long for is not the same as the reality you experienced. Missing a person is often missing the illusion they crafted, the moments of charm that were carefully designed to keep you hooked. But the narcissist does not want you to see that. They want you to believe that the emptiness you feel is a sign you should return, not a natural stage of healing. That is why they hold tightly to the hope that you will miss their presence. Because as long as they remain in your mind, they can convince themselves that they still hold power over your life when you decide to go no contact with a narcissist. One of the strongest hopes they hold is that you will eventually seek their validation again. Validation is the fuel that keeps a narcissist's fragile self-image alive. They survive by extracting recognition, praise, and attention from others, and in the dynamic you shared, your validation was one of their most consistent sources of supply. When you remove yourself, you take away not only your presence, but also the mirror they relied on to feel powerful, important, or superior. Their hope is that you will begin to feel a gap inside yourself, a longing for reassurance, and that this will drive you back to them for the very same validation they trained you to crave. This hope is rooted in how the relationship was built. Narcissists often create an environment where you are conditioned to look to them for approval. They do this by alternating between criticism and reward, tearing you down with disapproval, and then lifting you up with rare moments of praise. Over time, this trains you to chase their validation as a way of maintaining peace and feeling worthy. They understand the psychological bond they created, and even when you walk away, they count on that conditioning to linger. They believe you will eventually feel the pull to prove yourself again, to earn back the scraps of recognition they occasionally threw your way. Their hope grows stronger because they know validation is a universal human need. Everyone, in some form, wants to feel seen, appreciated, and valued. The narcissist twists this natural desire into a weapon. They deliberately make you question your worth so that their approval becomes the only antidote to the doubt they planted. When you cut off contact, they hope that the withdrawal from this cycle feels unbearable, that you will miss even their distorted version of validation. In their mind, you will grow restless without their acknowledgement and eventually seek it again, even if it comes wrapped in manipulation. They also see validation as proof of control. If you come back seeking their approval, it confirms to them that they still matter in your life. It reassures them that despite your silence, they remain the authority over your self-perception. This gives them a sense of superiority, because it means their influence extends beyond the relationship itself and into your very identity. They do not need to love you, respect you, or support you. As long as you come back looking for validation, they feel victorious. The narcissist may even set traps to lure you back into this cycle. They might flaunt achievements, post carefully curated images, or make indirect comments designed to provoke comparison or insecurity. These are not genuine expressions of pride or happiness, but calculated attempts to trigger a response in you. They want you to feel left out, inferior, or forgotten, so that your instinct is to reach out for acknowledgement. And once you seek that acknowledgement, the cycle of dependency is reactivated. What they overlook is that the need for validation does not have to be tied to them. Healing from their influence involves recognizing that your worth is not dependent on their opinion. But the narcissist refuses to imagine this possibility. In their worldview, your need for validation can only be satisfied by them. They hope that no matter how far you go, you will eventually circle back to the very place where they conditioned you to believe you must prove yourself. This hope reveals the depth of their insecurity. A person who is secure in themselves does not need constant reassurance from others, nor do they fear being forgotten. The narcissist, however, is built on a fragile ego that crumbles without attention. By hoping you will seek their validation again, they reveal not only their desire for control, but also their fear of insignificance. For them, your silence is intolerable because it threatens to prove that they were never as important as they imagine. That is why they cling to the belief that sooner or later you will come back, not for love, not for connection, but simply to hear them say once again that you matter. When you go no contact with a narcissist, one of the strongest hopes they cling to is that they still control your emotions. For them, control has always been the foundation of the relationship, more important than love, respect, or genuine connection. It is not enough for them to have had your time or attention in the past. They want to believe that even in your silence, they remain the central force shaping how you feel and how you think. They hope that every choice you make, every moment of reflection, every emotional wave inside you is still linked back to them. In their world, control does not end with distance. It extends into your mind long after the contact is cut. This hope exists because narcissists understand the emotional intensity they leave behind. They know their behavior often causes confusion, anger, grief, or longing, and they interpret all of these emotions as proof of their power. If you feel angry, they think it means you are still invested. If you feel sad, they see it as evidence that you miss them. If you feel confused, they believe they have succeeded in keeping you off balance. For them, it does not matter what the emotion is, positive or negative, as long as it revolves around them. The only response they truly fear is indifference, because indifference signals that their grip has finally been broken. They also hope that your emotions will eventually drive you back into contact. They want you to feel so overwhelmed by sadness or frustration that you reach out just to release the tension. They count on you replaying old conversations, imagining confrontations, or longing for closure, because all of these internal struggles suggest you are still under their influence. In their mind, if you are still thinking about them, they are still winning. This distorted logic allows them to maintain the fantasy that they are unforgettable, that they have a permanent place in your heart and mind. To reinforce this hope, narcissists often create situations designed to provoke emotional reactions even from a distance. They may flaunt new relationships, exaggerate their happiness, or post things meant to sting you indirectly. They hope these displays will trigger jealousy, pain, or anger, because such emotions tether you to them even in absence. It is not about genuinely moving on for them. It is about ensuring you cannot. They want you to remain emotionally reactive, because reactivity equals control. The longer you remain no contact, the more they rely on this hope to soothe their fragile ego. They tell themselves that even if you never speak again, they still live rent-free in your head. This belief protects them from facing the reality that their influence can fade. They imagine you lying awake at night, haunted by memories, longing for their attention, or consumed by the unresolved tension between you. It comforts them to think that while you may be silent on the outside, inside you are still entangled with them. What makes this hope so central is that it protects the illusion they build about themselves. Narcissists construct identities based on dominance and significance. To admit that they no longer affect your emotions would mean admitting they no longer matter. That truth is unbearable to them, because without control over others, their sense of self begins to collapse. So they cling to the hope that you are still struggling, that you are still hurt, that you are still angry, anything but free. But the irony is that their hope is also their weakness. Because they depend on the belief that they control your emotions, they often fail to see when you begin to heal. As you detach, as your emotions settle, as you learn to feel peace in their absence, the very foundation of their imagined control crumbles. They may continue to provoke, continue to hope, continue to fantasize, but the power they once held is no longer real. What remains is only their desperate wish that your heart and mind still revolve around them, because without that, they are forced to face the emptiness within themselves.